Hello, Legislative Affairs Directors. Congratulations, first of all, for filling this spot in your region. We're very excited to work with you, but not only that, I'm very excited to see the changes and the advocacy you guys are going to do, not only at a regional level, but at the statewide level. So we're going to go over a couple of duties and responsibilities for you as LADs. And please go ahead and write down any questions you have, because at the end of this, we're going to have a portion for questions and answers, questions and responses, and we'll give you that opportunity to drop them in chat. So first of all, let's go over the duties and responsibilities expected of you as a legislative affairs directors. You will direct all legislative and advocacy efforts of the region. You're going to serve as a voting member on the SSCCC Board of Directors. You're going to be in charge of disseminating and communicating all pertinent legislative information and advocacy efforts throughout the region. You're going to preside over all the Legislative Affairs Committee meetings. You're going to prepare and disseminate all the meeting agendas for the region's legislative affairs committees, and you're going to engage as many community college students in the region as possible in legislative advocacy and uplift the community college student concerns. A variety of this is actually going to be done through both your delegate assembly and your legislative affairs committees. Today, we're going to go over what a lot of these responsibilities look like. And many of you have already served as the voting member in our past board of directors meeting in July and this upcoming one in August. So if you guys want more, we do have a comprehensive list, and I will be sharing this training with you afterwards. But this is just kind of like a sneak peek into what you can expect being a legislative affairs director for your region. Next slide, Sean. Oh, I think you're on mute, Stephanie.
Yeah. So when we're talking about regional officers, we've got a nice little chart here for all of you. The idea is that every region is going to have a regional affairs director, some kind of a vice chair, a legislative affairs director, a treasurer, and a communications officer. If you haven't looked before, check out the regions map on our website, ssccc.org, to have a better idea of where each of the regions are. For the regional affairs director, that person ideally, and we know it can be challenging to get all of this in some regions, but the regional affairs director will be responsible for communicating with the vice president of regional affairs, staff, leading the regions on all matters, and then of course attending statewide regions. Vice chairs, will be communicating with the vice president, staff, and then the legislative affairs director, and this is the part that impacts all of you. You have the ability to communicate with the vice president of legislative affairs, that's Annie. They're on the call right now. Prepare legislative updates for your delegate assemblies, attend statewide LAC meetings, and then host regional LAC meetings. Mikhail. And then, of course, we have a treasurer, communications officer, and you can look at the slide to see what their responsibilities are as well, but I don't need to read it to you.
Perfect. And the one thing I really want to reiterate here is the importance of having a close relationship with all of your regional officers, but especially your RAD. You will need to work closely with your RAD during the delegate assemblies to ensure that you have a slot, not only to start your legislative affairs committee by appointing members through your DA, but to give updates during your delegate assembly to ensure that you are advocating and seeking out any feedback from all of your delegates, not only through your legislative affairs committee, but also through that delegate assembly. And the closer your relationship is going to be with your RAD, the more effective your region will be. You guys are going to work really hard together. So if you haven't met your RAD yet, definitely take some time to start building that relationship. Next slide. And this is exactly what I'm getting into, is teamwork makes the dream work. How can you work with your RAD to create a more effective region? And how can you take advantage of your regional legislative affairs committee? So I'm going to give a couple examples, and then I'm going to open it up to you guys to drop a couple things in chat and what you think answers this question best. And I'll read out a few responses. But really, the cornerstone of building and bridging this relationship with your RAD is what will make a successful region. Knowing that you have a slot on your agenda to give important legislative updates, but also a time to seek feedback. Another important thing that you guys will see come up during your first delegate assembly is going to be the appointment of appointing them to your regional level committees. And this is where it's really important to ensure you know what your legislative affairs committee is going to do, because that's going to be your opportunity to speak to your delegates and recruit them to essentially join your legislative affairs committee, so you really can make those choices. All of your delegates are going to have different backgrounds and different things that they want to prioritize. Some of them are really interested in the inner workings of legislation, and that's the perfect time to recruit them. So if anybody else wants to add anything, I'm going to give you about 2 minutes to drop it in chat, and I'll read out a few responses. Otherwise, we'll continue on with the training. All right, so we have visit colleges to see on the ground to see the work that needs to be done. That is a great way to do outreach within your region. And that is definitely something you can do with your regional affairs director to be a face of the region, but also to show students that you're there and educate students on what the SSCCC is, because not all of them may be aware. I'm going to give about 15 more seconds and see if anything else comes through chat. And if not, we're going to continue on. Another lad said, not doing everything yourself and delegating tasks while making sure you're taking care of what your constituents want. Super important. You don't want to have to be the heavy loader, and you don't want to take on all of the responsibility yourself. So it is important to build that relationship with your RAD so you guys can connect one another and see how you can divide up tasks, and make sure you're being responsible for what you're expected to do as a legislative affairs director. All right, perfect. Since we don't have another one, I'm going to go ahead and ask Sean to click the next slide.
All right, so delegate assemblies. One thing I want to put out there is if we start using acronyms and you're not used to some of these acronyms, please just let us know and we can revert back to saying things like delegate assemblies instead of DA, regional affairs directors instead of RAD, and all that. No shame in that. So as far as the DAs go, you are required to attend delegate assembly meetings each month beginning in September. This is really, really important. Your stipend will be deducted for missed meetings. Inevitably, there's always some issue that comes up with that. So we're telling you now, you need to be at these meetings. You are responsible for presenting the region legislative reports and any other information that may be requested. And then these meetings are an excellent time to engage with the delegates. If you want staff to attend, and this is another issue that tends to come up every year, we love attending, we love meeting folks, we love talking to them, we love doing trainings. You just have to give us time. So if you can give us at least 5 days notice, especially when we're in the legislative season, which spans from January through August, our schedules are a little bit nuts with hearings and everything. So give us 5 days notice. And if you can, try to hold your meeting during regular working hours. Next slide, please.
Perfect. And the one thing I want to reiterate is by adding a staff member to an agenda does not mean you've informed them. So if you'd like Stephanie or I or another staff member to attend, please email us or text us with that 5 days notice. We don't always see your guys' agendas 5 days before they go out, and we want to ensure that we're there and not that we've seen your agenda and you're expecting us there. Next thing I want to go over is legislative affairs committees, and these are going to be your regional level ones. So there are 2 types, and the one I'm going to go over is regional, and the next one will be the executive level. You are going to be required to hold and chair a legislative affairs meeting monthly beginning in October. It's October because in September, you're going to help your RAD during delegate assembly appoint your delegates. This is going to be a really important time to hear your delegates' stances before reporting back to the executive level, legislative affairs committee and the board. Also, same thing, if you'd like staff to attend, please give us a 5 days notice to hold your meeting during working hours. We're going to go over agendas a little bit later today, but we are always here to help you brainstorm ideas to add to your agenda during these legislative affairs committees. But some examples of things you're going to see are district visit planning, district trainings, legislative stance updates. We are coming up on a campaign season, and some of you may be interested in visiting local offices. So that is definitely something we could see on your agenda in the future. But this is really where that work's going to happen inside the regions. It's going to happen in these legislative affair committees regionally. And they're super important because when March rolls around, the more informed your delegates are, the better that they'll do if they want to attend our advocacy day in the Capitol. Next slide, please.
So at the executive level, this is a time for all of you to meet and to discuss what's happening regionally, to make recommendations and I wouldn't say make recommendations for the board of directors to finalize, but to talk about what you would want to bring forward. These meetings will be taking place monthly, and Annie, our VPLA, will chair. Again, same thing we've said before, please give us notice to attend. One thing I do want to note, though, for those of you who are interested in elections and election work locally, that's something you may want to get engaged with sooner rather than later. So if you want to contact us about how to do that, we can drop our emails in the chat. You just reminded me of that. Sorry, Michaela.
It's okay. It's exciting and it's upcoming. Next slide, please, Sean. Awesome. So now that we've gone over a little bit about what your committees are going to look like and your responsibilities as a LAD, we are going to do a refresher on what the Brown Act is. So next slide, Sean. The Brown Act. It is a law. It is a California state law that was enacted in 1953 to guarantee the public's right to attend and participate in meetings of local legislative bodies. That means all of our meetings that meet quorum as your regional meetings, your regional DA, your regional legislative affairs meetings, our board meetings are all underneath the Brown Act, which means we have to essentially work within the scope of the law. And we're going to go over what that looks like today. But this governs local agencies, legislative bodies of local government created by state or federal law, and any standing committee of a covered board or legislative body, and governing bodies of nonprofit corporations formed by public agencies. All student governments fall under the provisions of Brown Act. So we want to make sure we're following the law when we hold our meetings. Next slide.
And when we say all student government, we mean within the community college system. The UC and the CSUs actually have their own laws that are similar to the Brown Act. So here's some Brown Act key requirements. I cannot emphasize enough that we are beholden by law. We will get in trouble if folks are not abiding by the terms of the Brown Act. So it's incredibly important when you're in your meetings, you have your camera on, you post your agenda 72 hours in advance. We must know member locations. And that's information typically needs to go to Deja, needs to be posted. It's really, really, really important. The meeting time and location must be specified in a publicly accessible location. Ensure Americans with Disability Act compliance. You need to allow the public to attend. That's the biggest part of the Brown Act. That's the entire purpose, is to give transparency to organizations and groups like ours so that the public can attend. Only do agenda items, publicly report actions and votes, and we do not do secret ballots for actions. Next slide, please.
Perfect. So what is considered teleconferencing under the Brown Act? So there are very specific laws when we get into teleconferencing that you guys will need to abide by in your meetings. Next slide, Sean. So teleconferencing is defined as a meeting of individuals in different locations connected by electronic means through either audio, video, or both. There are very specific provisions that we're going to get into. But some of the key things I want to highlight is if you're going to teleconference in, which you guys will be doing for your regional LAC committees and likely your regional DA assemblies, is every single location that you or your delegate or board member are attending from will need to be posted on the agenda before the 72-hour mark. It's very common, and I highly, highly, highly suggest that you ask your delegates where they plan on attending meetings from regularly and keeping these addresses on the agenda. And all of these locations must be accessible to the public. That includes your house, your school, your apartment, your friend's house. If you're going to take a meeting from there, you've now opened up the location to be accessible to the public, which means you also must meet within the ADA requirements. So an apartment on a second story with no stairs or no elevator and only stairs is not considered ADA accessible. Another important thing to note here is that you must include the room number. So if you're going to do this on your campus in your ASO building, you must note the building and room number to keep it accessible to the public. Next slide.
So on that note, make sure you are taking meetings somewhere safe and somewhere where you're willing to have that address publicly out there. Okay, so try to really think about where you're taking these meetings. You should have just seen a poll pop up, and the question is a locked building a publicly accessible location?
Choice 3 is supposed to be, I don't know, and I don't know why it's stated as choice 3.
I like the person who voted for choice 3 without knowing what it was.
That's why I noted it. But it looks like I have 10 out of 17 of you, so most of you have likely participated, and we'll go over it in about 30 seconds.
Okay, well, thank you for those of you who participated. I think you all figured out, no, a blocked building is not publicly accessible. Thank you. Now, I just want to touch on AB 244 and 9. So I think you're all familiar with COVID. When the world went into lockdown, the state legislature had to act fast with how to handle, open meeting requirements. Because this doesn't just affect SBAs and the student senate, this impacts your local water agency and city councils and all kinds of organizations. So at that time, they adopted a number of exceptions to the Brown Act to allow people to teleconference from inside their homes. Most of those were temporary, but it's in 2022, AB 2449 was passed, which allows organizations that are beholden to the Brown Act to use teleconferencing without noting the location on the agenda for just cause or due to emergency circumstances. Now, you don't get to decide what an emergency circumstance is. You should review that language, see if it fits in a particular situation, because this is one of those things that comes up every year. What's an emergency circumstance to one person may not be an emergency circumstance under law. So please make sure if this is something you need to utilize in the future, review it, see what an actual emergency circumstance or just cause is. Next slide, please.
Perfect. So now we are actually going to move into your meeting agenda and what some of the laws are required for your meeting agendas under Brown Act. So it's very important to know that no action or discussion shall be undertaken on an item not appearing on the posted agenda. If you want to talk about something during your meeting, it needs to be on the agenda, listed either as a discussion or an action item. And we'll go into what that looks like in a little bit. But it's super important to remember that you can't add something new on an agenda. You have to have a 72-hour notice, or we actually require 96-hour business hours to post your agenda. But you have to give the public that notice to have the ability to appear in person. By talking about something that's not on the agenda, you're not giving the public the right to speak on it or have the opportunity to speak on it, and that is a violation of the Brown Act. Also, the agendas must provide a brief general description of each item of business to be transacted or discussed at the meeting. And this brief description can't be any more than 20 words. So 20 words or less to discuss what you will be discussing in this item. Next slide.
Agenda setting. So the Student Senate has employed a number of interns, one per region, ideally. So if you need help, or we do ask, you work with the regional student intern on agenda setting. They've been trained on this. I believe Sean can probably do it in his sleep. We have some pretty incredible interns, so take advantage of that. We do have an agenda template we'll help you through. We'll also help with walking through what a meeting should look like. Another really important tool that I think most of you are probably familiar with, but if you're not, that's forgivable, is When to Meet. And that's basically a website that you can send out to folks you are trying to meet with, and they can say what their availability is. You want to make sure you include addresses on the location. We've touched on that a few times. And then, of course, you need quorum to hold a meeting. Yeah, what did I miss, Michaela?
We really suggest utilizing When to Meet. It's a very simple tool. It's very user-friendly and easy to navigate. So make sure that when you utilize When to Meet, it's how you can figure out your delegates' availability. Highly recommend that when you set your first meeting, you ask them for reoccurring availability, and even set your meeting to happen the same day, same time of every month, because this makes it easier for people to plan ahead and schedule. And in the past, we've seen meetings be most effective when they take place on the same time each month. An example of this is our Executive Regional Affairs Committee was being held the last Friday of every month at 6 p.m. And I can tell you, almost every single meeting met quorum and almost had all of the members in attendance because they were able to plan ahead. So I highly suggest that you set a reoccurring meeting time utilizing When to Meet. And this will also give you a general idea of what your delegates' availability is for district meetings or whatever you want to have this availability for. And I would say send one out in the fall and then send one out again in the spring when we return for spring courses, because it's likely the availability won't change too much class-wise. Next slide. Perfect. So creating an agenda. Your first meeting will be held in October, or your stipend will be deducted. We have already created a template for you. It's going to be the Region Legislative Committee template, and it is in Google Docs under SSCCC templates. We will be creating and assisting with your first agenda, so you guys will receive an email from us when that's finalized, and this will have very important things to go over in your first meeting, and it will also ensure a successful start to your meeting. So once we have that officiated, if you'd like any staff assistance during your meeting, please feel free to ask me, Stephanie, VPLA, or your student intern. Make sure that when you create your student Zoom link for your meeting, that you're using your SSCCC account. Your SSCCC account does have Zoom Plus or Zoom Workplace, which guarantees that your meeting can be longer than 40 minutes. And it also means your link will never change. You'll always be able to use that same link on your agendas. Second to last, make sure you gather your addresses from your committee members for your agenda. I highly recommend that once you appoint your committee members during your first delegate assembly, you drop a note in chat and you ask them for their address of where they think they'll attend the meeting from. But also, before you post your agenda, give them a decent amount of time to reply to your email. I would say 3 to 5 days, ensuring that you have their address. And another thing that you can always do is, if you haven't heard from them or collected their address, is you can put their school's student government room just to ensure that they have a place they could possibly meet from if you haven't heard from them. That really should be used as a last case scenario, but it does give them an opportunity to attend from somewhere. Lastly, print, post, and submit. After you fill out all of the areas of your, or all of the areas on your agenda, you're going to post it at your college or your in-person location, because remember, that is now a public location, and ensure your posting aligns with the Brown Act requirements. So make sure your agenda is posted 72 hours before in a publicly accessible location. And make sure you've submitted your agenda to Deja 96 business hours beforehand to ensure proper posting and the ability to hold your meeting. Deja will not bend on this rule, so really make sure that you have that 96 hours of business hours. Staff does not work on weekends, so get your agenda to Deja in time. Next slide.
All right, now that we've reminded you 37 times to include addresses and post your things 96 hours beforehand, let's go into an agenda example. Here's what we consider a good legislative agenda. It needs to include a call to order and a roll call. We do use Robert's Rules of Orders. We'll get order. You've heard that before. We'll get into that a little bit later. But part of this is to also ensure that everybody is present. When you do attend meetings online, please make sure that your camera is on. You'll need to approve the agenda, approve the minutes, open it up for public comments. In the past, we've done legislative affairs committees have done roundtables and talked about what's going on in their regions. And then there are going to be a number of actionable items. So potential legislative stances, discussions about legislative visits. You all have chosen to become legislative affairs directors. I mean, that means that there's going to be a lot of conversations about what's going on at the state level, with potential bills, with potential policies, budget items. So just to be prepared to talk about those kinds of things coming in this coming future. A statewide legislative update, provide regional updates, and then communications from the floor. Again, this is just a sample. We are going into an election year. We're going into what may be a really, really exciting or not exciting, depending on who you are, changes to what we're seeing in the state and at the federal level. So there is a level of flexibility, but it's helpful to always provide an example. Next slide, please.
Perfect. So now we're going to go over the differences between a discussion and an action item. So a discussion item means that no action may be taken on this item. Once you list it on your agenda as a discussion item, it cannot be changed into an action item. It is to discuss things, and it's to discuss matters and matters only. Now you can see it reappear on a future agenda as an action item, but this is just to discuss it. And it's just intended to provide information, and it does not require quorum to occur. An actionable item are intended for the body to take a formal action, which likely means a vote, and you need to have quorum to be able to take this action. Sometimes you guys will hold meetings and you won't meet quorum. That doesn't mean we have to say, all right, we'll see you guys next month and end the meeting there. You can still go over your agenda and open up the tasks or open up the items to be discussed, just not acted upon. And this still ensures that you're not wasting your delegates or your own time, and you're discussing important matters to know maybe how you're going to proceed in the future. Now, if you don't meet quorum and you have an action item on your agenda, I highly recommend bringing it back to your next meeting or seeing if you can set a meeting later on that month to meet everybody's availability. But like we've said before, and we're really helping you set yourself up for success, is utilize when to meet, try to find a reoccurring day and time, and you'll likely have a lot better luck with your quorum being met than you will by putting a meeting on a random Tuesday and emailing everybody out. All right, guys, it's on Tuesday. Really, really, really have effective communication with your RAD and your delegates to ensure you meet quorum. Next slide.
And that, there also needs to be a little bit of responsibility on everybody who's attending these meetings. If you last minute can't, for whatever reason, things come up, we totally get that. But just understand that that impacts everyone. Your position on this committee is incredibly important. And attending these meetings is incredibly important. So posting the agenda, you must submit your agenda to Deja or Dr. Adams no later than 92 business hours prior to your meeting. Touched on that 27 times. Sean. Next slide. Thank you.
We're really trying to push that fact out there. I did have a poll that even asked the same question, but I won't give it to you guys because I think we really know 96 business hours beforehand. So now we're going to go a little bit into our motions and the type of motions that you can be made. So your main motions are going to be your most common motions. These are going to introduce your business items. Your secondary usually refers to the motion on the table. Privilege motions don't relate to the pending motion, but are dealt with immediately. And incidental motions change the way a motion is being handled. An example of this is, let's say that we're voting on going on a district visit. So we want to go on a district visit and we want to go visit assembly member such and such, and we need to allocate money. I motion to allocate $200 worth of travel expenses to go visit assembly member such and such on September 1st. That motion would require a second before it can be voted on. So what's super important is that you do receive that second, or else the motion will die on the floor. So long as I receive a second motion, we can go into a roll call vote, because that it does require finances and money. And let's say that there's a question on this. You can ask for a point of privilege to clarify, or seek more information out. And lastly, you can make a motion to amend my original motion. So let's say that you don't think $200 is going to be enough to cover the delegate's expenses. You can motion to cover the full cost of the delegate, or you can motion to amend so we can cover the full cost of the delegate expenses and kind of increase that threshold. That would require, though, a vote to move on the amendment and then vote back on the original motion. I know it sounds super complicated, but we will be there as staff and as the student interns to ensure that your motions are being made properly. And I promise they come a lot more natural as you're doing them. Next slide.
All right, let's get emotional. Steps to handle emotion. First step, the motion is moved. Michaela just touched on that. The motion is seconded. So if the motion is not seconded, the motion dies there. Now, for those of you who are interested in state politics and who may be coming up to the Capitol at some point in the future to see how the committees up there are handled, they do the same thing. It's pretty fun to watch the parallels. Third, the chair restates the motion. However, the chair states the motion is how it is going to be handled. So make sure it's correct. Chairs make mistakes too. I don't think anybody in this organization has ever had a problem correcting a chair, which is fabulous. It's nice to see everybody doing their active listening. And let's continue that. We want to make sure everything is correct and that we're abiding by, all rules and regulations. Step 4, the motion is debated, and then the motion is put to a vote by the chair. The chair will repeat the question, which each vote would mean. And the reason we're emphasizing this is sometimes things change in discussions and it can get really confusing about what you're voting, especially if there are some double negatives in there. And again, listen carefully, be an active member of the board and active member of the committee, make sure each motion is stated correctly. And then finally, the motion result is announced by the chair. Next slide.
Perfect. So now that we've gone over our Brown Act and our Robert's Rule of Orders and our agendas, I'm going to do a quick Google Drive walkthrough with you guys because this is going to ensure that you guys know what your Google Drive looks like and where to find your files. But I want to reiterate the importance of not editing this Google Drive. You are going to add files to this Google Drive, but you are not going to edit the actual existing folders inside of the drive. So I'm going to go ahead and start sharing screen. Sean, do you want to stop sharing screen? Perfect. Thank you. Awesome. And now that you guys can see my screen, you are going to see that I'm in the Master Student Senate Drive and I'm under Student Senate Regions. So this is super important because this is where all of the information is going to be held for your meetings, including your agenda and your minutes, because this drive is accessible to the public. So I'm going to go ahead and use Region 5 for an example. So as you can see, we have the prior drives in here. We have photos, we have the map of where the colleges are. We have last year's drive and we have this year's drive. So I'm going to show you guys this year's drive. And Region 5 is one you guys can always access and look back on the past years. I saw Josh and Jerry are both in here, so I'm going to go ahead and compliment them. They did a very good job on maintaining their drive, and it's really one you can look back on for reference if you have any questions. So once you're inside of the regional drive for the year, you'll see we have accountability and stipend reports, delegate assembly meetings, executive meetings, external committees, internal committees, newsletters, and reports. So everything for your region is going to be housed in here, and it is publicly accessible. Under delegate assembly meetings is really going to be for your RADs, but if you as a legislative affairs director are submitting a presentation, you're going to want to go ahead and make sure that it falls in here under your first folder, which will likely be named September Delegate Assembly. So you really want to keep anything in there so it's publicly accessible for the public. Where it's important for you is you're going to go to internal regional committees. Oh, and this is going to be your roster. So this is going to be where you identify who your legislative affairs committee members are, but you're also going to have a folder in here that goes over, it's going to say Legislative Affairs Committee, and that's where you're going to house all of your documents. I'm actually going to show you an example of last year's, so I'm not talking about hypotheticals. So once you go in here, you go into your internal regional committees, and you'll see here you have the Legislative Affairs Committee. Our prior legislative affairs director for Region 5 has something for every single month. So if you go to his April meeting, you'll click here, you'll see his agenda and his minutes. And had he had any prior or supporting documents, they would have also been inside of here. So super important, you keep all of your documents in here. It's also important for historical context that we have access to your agenda, your minutes, and it will make it easier for your successor. As you can see, your prior legislative affairs directors did a really good job of keeping all of this information for you. All right, next slide. Oh, I'm sorry, Sean, if you want to reshare and next slide. Thank you. Awesome. I'll hand this over to Stephanie.
So this is where it gets interesting, at least looking towards the future. So I'm sure none of you joined this organization to become more well-versed in the Brown Act and Robert's Rules of Order. If you did, good for you. But I'm personally more interested in the legislative side. So looking at our future events, one thing we're going to be asking all of you to do, because it's incredibly important, is making the district advocacy visits. So that means meeting with your local state level senator, your local assembly member, possibly your board of trustees, depending on what's going on. We've mentioned before, you've probably been aware of this. There's a little bit of an election coming up here. And there might be some really serious changes throughout the state, at least when it comes to your senator and assembly member. One of the most valuable things you all can do for our organization is create these new relationships. Get into these offices, meet with the staff. So that's something we're going to be talking about more as the year goes on, but it's a really cool thing to do. It's a great way for you to have a better understanding of your state, democracy, local, blah, blah, blah. Going into the next legislative year, like I mentioned before, it's essentially from January through August. We will have an advocacy day. So you'll come up to Sacramento. Some of you will be asked to come up and testify on bills if you're willing to do so. It's a really, really cool thing to do. You're often testifying in the state capitol. So just be prepared for that. Advocacy Academy is coming up on November 22nd through November 24th. We look forward to seeing you all there. That is peer pressure. And the March in March, which is going to happen in conjunction with our Advocacy Day, is on March 4th. Last year, looks like we had around 500 students and faculty members. We marched from the Rivercat Stadium, which is in West Sacramento, all the way down to the state capitol where we had a rally. It was super fun, really excited to have you all there. And if any of these really, jump out as something you want to become engaged in, you want to learn more about, reach out to me. I'm happy to chat with you. Next slide.
Perfect. And then, so here are some examples of how you guys can engage locally within your regions as legislative affairs directors. And we've seen very, 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 very much success come out of engaging locally. You can attend your board of trustees meetings on your college campuses and on other college campuses. City council or county board of supervisors, party affiliation and participation. Again, we are coming up on an election year. If you want to get involved, it's a really good way to network and build relationships with possibly future assembly members and senators and their staffers. I can't tell you how many times I've asked somebody, how did you get into this job in the Capitol? And they'll say, oh, I started working on campaigning. Oh, I was part of the campaign. And then they get hired on as full staff. So you're really building those relationships from the ground up. And it's likely that if they're working on a campaign, they're interested in some kind of local legislation. So you'll meet with them again. Super important to create positive and effective relationships and not burn bridges, because it's likely you'll see someone again. You can visit your state senator, assembly member, or congressperson at their district office. We will have many opportunities for you guys to do this. Sometimes we target these visits very specifically, but also will help you guys in just creating meetings to meet and greet with them. Your student interns have all been trained and know how to plan these meetings. So if you're interested, definitely reach out to them or feel free to reach out to me. And as the year comes, we'll definitely be doing trainings on how to do these. But the better connections we have with our local members, the better success our legislation has as it goes through. I can't tell you how many times just having a positive relationship has helped our bill pass a committee we weren't even expecting it to go to. So really, really, really focus on those local relationships and positive and effective communication. Next slide, Sean. Perfect. This is my favorite part because we really get to hear from you guys. So you can either drop your questions in chat or you can raise your hand and I will unmute you to ask a question. So the floor is now your guys's.
And if there are no questions, we will all move on with our lives. Oh, lad 4.
Give me 1 second. I'm trying to unmute them. Let's see. Did that give you the opportunity to unmute? If not,
It
just
did. Can you guys
awesome.
all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I don't know if anyone else has this problem, but I mean, there's been so many people who have used these accounts that in the drive, there were a lot of folders who were not like created by SSCCC, but by the people. Like there's one about like an event that happened like 5 years ago. Am I good to delete that?
I would say do not delete anything in your Google Drive without reaching out to Dr. Adams, because we want to make sure that everything in this drive stays publicly accessible.
Hi, thank you.
We also want to keep historic record of a lot of things. So, but if it really seems inappropriate or you're just like, what, please reach out and we can look at it. Thank you.
Someone asked if we're going to get a copy of today's slides. Please email me and I will send you a copy of today's slides. This video will also be accessible as soon as we get it properly closed caption. It will be added into the Canvas tutorial. But if you want the slides sooner, feel free to email me. I'll drop my email in chat for all of you. And Stephanie is also.
Great. Well, if we don't hear from you now, I will assume that you all know to post your agendas publicly and basically abide by every law. Going forward, however, if you do have questions, we have dropped our emails in the chat. Please email us. We're super, super excited to meet with all of you. I promise future meetings will be slightly more entertaining and they will be more focused on your positions as LAC members / LADs.
And then Dr. Adams went ahead and stated in chat that the slides and presentation will be sent to everyone within the next few days. So keep an eye out in your email for that. All I have to add is if you added the meeting, if you join the meeting later, please ensure that you've sent me your name and your position, just so we can ensure accountability that you have attended and your stipend is not affected.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, guys.